Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Sky, and I'm a strategist with the Yazo Group and also a great friend of Jennifer Kriat-Solis. So I'm here with Jennifer today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Jennifer Kriat-Solis is a PhD and is a certified yoga therapist specializing in eating disorders and body image. She's a sought after international speaker and former host of Real Body Talk, an online interview talk show. Through her virtual school, Yoga for Eating Disorders, Jennifer offers individual yoga therapy, groups, classes, and continuing education and mentoring for professionals. She's the author of Body Mindful Yoga and The Courageous Path to Healing. It's a new book that is literally coming out in April, so we are so excited about it. Her writing has been featured widely in print, broadcast, and online media. So we'll give you some information on how to access the website at the end of our discussion, but we're here today to talk about the courageous path to healing. So excited that you've created this book for all of us to read, to navigate. And I know I've already had the opportunity to read one chapter, and it's very powerful and it provokes a lot of thought and a lot of self reflection. So thank you in advance.
Thank you, Dana, so much for your kind words.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to doing work with the book. I really am. So let me just start here. Your story is about overcoming an eating disorder, and you share that this book speaks to the broader human experience of suffering, healing, and personal growth. With whom might this book resonate and why?
Well, certainly it's going to resonate with people who've gone or been or are currently on an eating disorder recovery journey, right? Just because that is specifically what I share about my, personal life. But I think, it really can be expanded out to anyone who is on a personal journey, whether that's a mental health journey, a physical illness journey, maybe it's a journey of the heart, right? Grief, going through relationship challenges, right? Because I think as humans, we all experience pain. We all experience insecurity. We all experience moments of maybe not feeling confident. We experience shame. We experience guilt. We know what it feels like to compare ourselves to others. We also know what it feels like to, you know, believe that maybe healing isn't for me, right? That moment of doubt, like when the mountain just feels too big to climb. So these are some of the themes that are woven through my story, and I think they speak to everyone, right? Themes of how do we care for our bodies, minds, and spirits? How do we love ourselves better? Um, so I'm really excited to hear from readers about how these themes resonate with them and how they're, exploring those themes in relation to their own journeys.
That's awesome. And I think it's really amazing the work that you're doing with the school, with the virtual school, and the courses that you offer. There's, in addition to what you're providing with this book and the questions and the practices that go with each chapter, pardon me, that there's more. There's even more. So I'm just thrilled to talk to you about it and to explore from your perspective um, how people are going to navigate this and how you suggest that they go about it. So can you just give us a little description in case some people are not aware, what are eating disorders and who do they affect?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Um, well, eating disorders can affect anyone, anywhere. Right? We have it kind of in our social consciousness that eating disorders only affect, white adolescent girls of middle to upper class, and that an eating disorder looks like an emaciated body, right? That's the image that we've been most, familiar with. Certainly, those things are true. They do affect, white teenagers who are girls, but they also affect people of all ages, all races, all genders, all socioeconomic classes. So I think it's really important that we expand our awareness of who is affected, right? And it's also very important to kind of bust that myth that an eating disorder is only about thinness or looking thin. Eating disorders affect all body sizes. And we can't always say that a diagnosis of anorexia looks thin and emaciated. Anorexia can happen in all body sizes, as can binge eating disorder, bulimia, and some of the other known eating disorders. So it's really important to me that people understand that this is an illness that can affect everyone. And it is also the second most fatal mental illness. So it is serious. And if you're watching this and you're suffering, struggling, I want you to know that, you deserve help and support, and to not minimize what you're going through, because it is very serious.
Yeah. And it can really happen at any time of your life.
That's right. It can happen at any time of your life. That's such a good point. Yes, we see it very, like, just tragically happening in young people now. I think I've recently heard that, we're seeing diagnoses in 8-year-olds, which is heartbreaking. But yes, it can also be later in life as well. So having that awareness is really important.
Yeah. And I love that your resources provide for that adult that can address it themselves, but also that parent that is starting to see tendencies and is worried and doesn't even know where to start and thinks that they could be too young. How in the world, could they be dealing with this? Which makes me think, how do you define courage as it applies to healing from hardship or illness?
For me personally, courage is showing up, showing up for myself, showing up when I'm afraid and I don't want to show up, showing up when I feel worried that people are judging me, showing up when I feel unsure that I can accomplish what I'm setting out to do, right? So it's like really showing up in the face of all of that doubt and worry and fear. And showing up also means, to me, making myself a priority, making my health a priority, right? Whether that's mental health, emotional health, physical health, spiritual health, right? Seeing them all as equally important and vital to my overall wellness, right? So, I think we live in a world where we're often trained to put ourselves second, third, fourth, fifth, right? We're trained, and we're trained that that's honorable. It's honorable to put yourself second, so that you can be more productive, or that you can have more status, or that you're taking care of everybody else first. But then what happens is, like, our basic needs stop getting met, and we stop caring for ourselves, and there's really nothing honorable about that. That's suffering. So I think it's, looking at how some of those beliefs have shown up in my life, of believing that I have to put myself second, and rewiring those beliefs and saying, no, I'm going to be courageous and show up for myself despite what I've been trained to believe.
Yeah. And, hard to do. So,
Definitely hard to do.
This aspect of the exercises in the book, I think, will be amazingly helpful, because you ask us those questions. I saw it in the first chapter already. I saw the questions and I was like, okay, I have to think about this. And there's a little guilt around, putting yourself first. And that's the work. That's the work of just, self-love is the most important thing, right? Because then we can be of service to everyone else, as long as we love ourselves first.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
easier said than done.
Absolutely. And this is where that magical word and comes in. You know, it's like I can care for you and myself. You know, I can take care of this task and make sure I eat lunch, right? I can
Mhm.
do this and I can do that versus the black and white. I can only, either or, that belief that we have to kind of put ourselves on the back burner. It's like, no, there's an opportunity for an and
Yeah,
that is so courageous. And being committed to that courage, um, the repetition of showing up for ourselves, even when it doesn't feel good, even when it's hard, right? And that's what I'm hoping to share through my story, that resilience and perseverance is possible. Um, did I do it perfectly? No, but those are kind of the anchors for me. So I'm hoping by sharing them with others, they get to recognize their own courage that they've already been practicing in their journeys.
right. So that makes me think about the next, the next phase of our lives as women. It makes me think about your story of relapsing in your 30s when you had your two girls.
Yeah.
Um, that's a really interesting time in the life of a woman, but also men go through major body transformations along with their wives while they're expecting babies. It's a lot to think about. How did this change the trajectory of your life?
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think your question is reminding me of something that I wanted to say earlier about, what are eating disorders? And then I'll link this back to your question. Um, Eating disorders, it's important to understand that they're a way to cope with pain. They're a way to cope with trauma. They're a way to cope with um, discomfort and overwhelm, and these things that we as humans experience. So even though eating disorders get played out through food and body, there are they are responses to these bigger things like pain and grief and trauma. Um, so they're not diets gone wrong, and they're not phases, and they're not about vanity. They're about much deeper root causes. So to come back to your question, at that time in my life, I was dealing with, postpartum depression, sleep deprivation. I had a 1 year old and a newborn, well, almost a 2 year old and a newborn, right? And so for me, that time, I was so overwhelmed. And I know other parents listening can understand. It is it's a joyful time and a happy time and a beautiful time. And for me, it was the most overwhelming, um, confusing, scary, exhausting time. And I really felt so lost to myself. I did not know who I was anymore. Um, and so the only way my brain knew how to make sense of coping with all of that was the eating disorder, right? Because that's how I had coped with hard things in my life earlier on when I was in college and first diagnosed. So I wanted to just clarify, like, that relapse became a way to cope with all that was going on as a mother. And it was a blessing in disguise because it did lead me on my path to do this work. Because when I went away to treatment and I had to leave my babies, which was really painful, um, I had to leave them for a month. And I had to get really clear with myself while I was away around, what am I going to do to keep myself well? How am I going to be courageous and make myself a priority and my babies, right? And my family, because they're going to need, they're like, life's going to be overwhelming for a long time. Like, this isn't going to go away. So, what am I going to do differently? How am I going to respond differently? And it was clear in that reflection of I need to get back to yoga. That was something that had helped me get well the first time, and something that was really key to my life. I taught yoga for a long time before getting married and finishing graduate school. So that put me on my path to studying yoga therapy, and doing the work that I do now. And the first couple years out of treatment were grueling, but they led me to that yoga therapy training when I was well enough to do that, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it is. And so amazing. So amazing. And I can so relate to a lot of what you said. I went into, some serious postpartum depression with my second child. I think I had it the first time too, but it took a second time around for it to seal the deal.
Yeah.
And you're grasping. You're really just, you're grasping for what can I do to, and again, the guilt, like I'm supposed to be so joyful.
Yeah. And I can't stop crying.
Yeah. You're in awe and you feel not so good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's a really difficult time. And I hope that others who are listening and have experienced that, can just like validate themselves, because there is nothing simple about going through that. And also just I think for me, giving birth was very traumatic, especially with my first daughter. And I think that's not talked about, birthing traumas and the toll that can take on someone's mental health. And these are very, very real pieces of my story, and I know others too.
Interesting. Almost makes me think we have another course we might ask you to teach.
I'm not an expert in that.
Well, but you have people.
Yeah.
So, you call commitment your greatest teacher. Can you explain that to us?
There were so many times I wanted to give up in my recovery journey. There were so many times I wanted to turn back to eating disorder behaviors because they give you a false sense of safety and control and power and comfort and smallness. And when you're going through recovery, especially the early years, you have to do things that you're terrified of multiple times a day, right? You have to you have to navigate your relationship with food and do it differently than when you did with an eating disorder. That's terrifying. You have to have hard conversations with people as you are trying to set boundaries and make yourself a priority. And that's hard and scary, right? You're in therapy and having to talk about things that are painful, and that's uncomfortable and not preferable.
Mhm.
Like you're constantly having to face fear. And yes, there are wins during that you celebrate, but it's a very ebb and flow process. Plus, you're going through shifts in your relationship with your body, and emotions are heavy, and so it can create this experience of the body being so heavy. Like it just gets very confusing, and exhausting. And so there were times like I wanted to give up. And for a while there, I did walk the line of always being on the verge of crisis. And it was because I wasn't really ready to let go, to see what's possible on the other side. I was still so overwhelmed. My children were so young. I was trying to work, I had a husband, a house. And so there was still that, like, I'm trying to cope with all this and I'm trying to heal it. I'm trying to do both, And so that at times you just want to throw up your hands and be like, screw it, But I did not want to go back to treatment and leave my family. And that was my motivator to keep going. And so the more I stayed true to my commitment, the more I was repetitively saying, no, I'm committed. I'm doing this, even though I'm afraid, even though I doubt, even though I don't want this right now. It was the repetition of doing all the right next things that got me to where I am today. And that's what I always tell my clients. It's the repetition of doing what doesn't feel natural and normal. It's the repetition of doing those things, and then they start to feel more natural and normal. And you start to realize your strength and your power and your courage and all of these characteristics that allow you to overcome the thing that you're fearing and doubting. So for me, choosing to stay on the healing path, choosing it, staying committed, one step at a time, is what showed me what I'm capable of.
Yeah, that's awesome. My son describes it when I talk. He's one of my greatest teachers. So it describes it as small rungs on the ladder. He always says, Mama, just visualize that ladder. The rungs are very small, just one at a time.
That's right. That's
And
right.
It's really big. And then, and then there's yoga.
Yeah.
Which, thank God for yoga.
Yeah.
Now I'm I guess about halfway through my 500-hour training, and teaching. I've been teaching for about 10 years, and I'll tell you that changed my life.
Yeah.
Changed my life, yoga. And I love the way you use practice and philosophy and meditation and journaling and everything in your therapy, in your school, and in your book. So how should readers approach the yoga-inspired activities in your book?
Yeah. So the activities in the Courageous Path to Healing are meant for self-reflection. So there's not, I'm not asking anybody to roll out a yoga mat and put on gear and do a big practice or anything like that. These are just small little like nuggets that I invite people to, skim through and see which practices resonate with them. Whether that's a breathing practice, maybe it's just a movement practice with the arms, maybe it's a journaling practice, maybe it's a grounding or meditative practice. Each chapter has one of these practices, and I guide you through them step by step. So they're not meant to be done in any type of rigid way. Kind of take from the chapters the things that resonate with you, and know that these are just asking you to take 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you choose, to be courageous and commit to yourself in that amount of time and make yourself a priority and do something kind for yourself. Right. So I would say don't approach them in a rigid way. Do the ones that really speak to you and resonate with you. If there's some that you kind of feel like, that like visceral, like, no, I don't want to do that, maybe just pause with that and ask why, right? Because there might be a gem in that practice just waiting for you, right? So don't shut it down, and just let the practices be your guide. You will learn about yourself by doing those practices, and that's my intention.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're sitting with a book by yourself with your breath, and just exploring, just taking that quiet time for self-love. Let's talk about the media and how you believe things need to change, mental health and eating disorders depicted in the media, language use, just kind of give us your feeling about that topic in general.
It's a big topic. It could be a discussion all on its own. Luckily, there are quite a few organizations and movements going on to help shift the way eating disorders and mental health have been portrayed. Certainly in the eating disorder realm, we are having more representation and images, meaning different body sizes and races and genders being depicted, which is terrific. There needs to be more, right? We need to be doing more around inclusion in treatment and the way eating disorders are researched and the way they are understood in the medical world. That's a big piece. They're really not understood in the medical world. I mean, I have so many clients with horror stories, going into doctor's office and people just being so insensitive with their language and just because they have no understanding of what an eating disorder is. So I think certainly that representation and imagery is really key, but there needs to be larger efforts in inclusion. And, I talk in my book about some of the language that we use in the eating disorder space, recovered, recovery, like these words kind of, what do they mean really? What do they really mean? People say to me, do I say I'm in recovery or I'm recovered or what is it? Because recovery can feel like this, like this mountain that you're climbing. Like I'm in recovery, I'm climbing this mountain. Where does it end? Right? Recovered can feel like a destination, right? Like I've arrived and it's done and it's over and see ya, right? Language like relapses and slips and lapses and like all this kind of language that to me, it just kind of like resonates with the word failure. Like I have relapsed, I have failed, I have lapsed, I have failed, I'm slipping, I'm failing. Like this type of language, I don't know how helpful it is, and there's a way in which eating disorders are often kind of talked about as like, we other ourselves. Like my eating disorder is telling me to do this, right? And granted, I've lived it. I know that is the experience. It does feel like there is this thing inside saying, speaking to you and directing your actions. But, one of my greatest lessons that I learned going through my own yoga therapy was when my yoga therapist said to me, and I share this in the book, like you're capable of everything you are because of the eating disorder and in spite of it. Like you keep othering yourself. Why are you doing that? Like this is a part of you. Can you treat it as a teacher and learn from it and change versus this thing you need to, banish and this thing that you're ashamed of and this thing, and I thought, my gosh, like if someone had said that to me 20 years ago when I first went to treatment, how different might my path have been? How different might all of our paths have been who are on a mental health journey where we're kind of like, the language is around the thing that you have is bad,
Oh, I totally know.
I don't know if this is a very popular opinion on what I'm sharing here, because I know, I've heard it in clinical settings of, therapists saying, well, your eating disorder is telling you to do that, kind of thing. And again, I get it. I've lived it, but I think there's a better way we can be talking about this, like rather than your eating disorder is telling you to do this, maybe it's like, well, something in your life is trying to get your attention right now, if that's what your thoughts are. What do you think in your life is trying to get your attention right now? That's different. Like, why do you think these urges are showing up right now? What is that about? What's going on in your life? What are you feeling? What are you thinking? What's, like, let's learn from, the thoughts and the urges. Let's not demonize them.
Yeah, that's so good. It's the language that we use to tell ourselves is just so important. It's and the upside, I always try to make lemonade out of lemons, is that when you've gone through a hard time and you're overcoming it, you're on the path, you become stronger.
Definitely.
become more resilient and you become more interesting in some capacity. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I got layers here. Um, and one of my favorites, as a ballet dancer, as a young girl, one of my favorite words was, or pieces of advice was, when it's uncomfortable, invite it to dance.
I
And
love
that
that.
idea of, okay, so I'm dealing with this feeling right now, so let's dance.
Yeah.
Just kind of
Yeah.
like lightens it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. And again, I mean, what I'm saying here about language isn't to shame or guilt anyone who does approach, their illness from through that lens. I mean, I did too for a very long time. It's not right or wrong. It's just this awareness of, is there a different way we can relate to our pain and our challenges? You know, just a softer, more compassionate way, so that we're not othering ourselves and constantly in this, you know, tug of war with shame and guilt. It's just it's just so hard to get out of that.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you about one more topic. And, it's just kind of hard in this day and time to not at least touch upon the pandemic and, the COVID illness and how it's affected not just eating disorders, mental health, everything, kind of like everything. um, Certainly sent more people into mental health issues and eating disorder issues. And also how it's affected your life personally. Maybe you could just kind of come in and talk to us about the book as a tool, your experience, and how you're using your own therapy to help yourself.
Yeah. You're right. Like, the pandemic has really affected people's mental health. And, I just want to say, you don't have to have a diagnosis of something to validate that you've been affected. You know, we've all been affected. And I always say, like, the global nervous system is just so amped and jacked up from, being in this survival mode, and it's affected all of us. And I really, my heart really goes out to everyone, because it's been rough. Um, and I think, I often like laugh because, I started writing this book at the beginning of the pandemic. And it was really difficult because my whole entire family was home. My kids were home from school. I've never been one to work from home. I like to write in cafes. So I couldn't get into my groove of go into a cafe, sitting with a latte and writing. I had noise everywhere, kids coming up every 20 minutes needing something. It was just chaos. Um, so, the actual writing at times was very grueling. I did hire a writing teacher, and that made the experience very, very, just took the experience to a whole new level. And I'm so grateful that I had a teacher to guide me. Um, and gratefully, I finished my book before I got sick with COVID. And that was going on 16 months ago. And I'm still dealing with it. Someone with long COVID, and it's been incredibly life altering and debilitating. Um, and it's not lost upon me that, I'm living through this health challenge, crisis. I don't know what the language is. While this book, The Courageous Path to Healing, is coming into the world. And so I'm really working to continue to practice what I teach. I'm using breathing tools to help calm my nervous system. I'm doing my best to stay committed to making myself a priority and take care of my family the best I can. Can't do it in the way that I used to, but I do my best, really trying to bring into my life to the fullest the yoga philosophies that I talk about in the book and how they help me through my recovery process, and honoring my grief that I feel, because I don't know if I'll ever walk my dog again or drive my car or do the things that used to make me feel fulfilled. So really working on honoring all the feelings and the worries, and also coming into gratitude for the health that I do have, and the good in my life. So I'm really working hard, to bring everything that I share in the book into my present health situation.
It's really amazing. You are a tough woman, and I'm just so blessed to be able to work with you. It's been quite an experience, and I just I just give you so much credit for the unbelievable commitment to yourself, to your family, to your school, to this book.
Yeah.
It's really magical.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
I'm very blessed to work with you. So I guess we're at a point where I feel like we've given everyone a little taste of what they might experience with this amazing book that will be literally flooding out of all of its channels on April 8th.
Yes.
So is there anything else that you want to say as we wrap up on our virtual book launch?
Yeah. Thank you, Dana, so much for all your great questions. And thank you to everybody for watching. I really hope that my story is a window into recognizing the courage and commitment that you've already put forth in your story, and that some of the tools and the different practices that are offered, can just help further you on your own healing path. And please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear what you think once you read the book. If there's something that resonates with you, something you want to, share about a personal experience, a question you want to ask, love to have the conversation. So please feel free to reach out.
It's wonderful. So we definitely have ways for you to get a hold of the book. You can order it on Amazon. Jennifer, do you want to tell people how?
Sure. You can order it anywhere that books are sold. You can also get it through my publisher, Llewellyn Worldwide. And you can also check out more about the book and the work I do with yoga for eating disorders on my website, which is yoga4 eatingdisorders.com. So yoga for eating disorders with the number 4 in it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to meet with me and talk about your book. And I'm really looking forward to reading it myself. Always learning from you.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.